Hello everyone, Mini Motorman here, and I'm going to try something new today. Now, I apologize for the long absence of videos. I just haven't had the time and I haven't had the energy to start producing videos. And so this is what I'm going to do is take this opportunity to accept that I'm not a very talented video editor, nor do I have the ability or the time to do this full time. I don't have the time to dedicate to this as much as I would like. So what I'm going to do is go for the spoken word podcast in slight video form, I guess you can call it. Well, I'm not going to focus on the audio. I'm not going to focus on the video production of anything. I'm just going to put the information out regarding a certain subject, because I've received a lot of questions over the years, not just on YouTube, but from people in general who have been interested in mechanics. And so I'm just going to start creating these voice video podcast episodes and on certain on questions that I've received in the past. And so for those of my YouTube subscribers, all 1,100 of you, hooray, feel free to ask questions too. Now, I don't have time to answer every single question. As I said, I'm actually quite busy at the moment. And so, but I will be reading the questions and I will keep those in mind. So if I get, there's certain questions that keep getting asked over and over, and I start seeing patterns. I'll probably create podcast episode to address those too. I'm also going to address episodes that issues that I hear in real life too, because I am a real life mechanic. So just to keep that in mind. So anyway, but like I said, the information is what's most important here. And so I'm going to be creating these podcast episodes mostly for tinkerers, for people who are interested in machines. Sometimes I'll go into, maybe like, for example, something that some of my friends have really liked that I've talked about over dinner is I'll bring out a few pistons. I'll start showing them the different angles that are cut into it, the different materials they can be made out of, the different dynamics that you have to deal with when you're engineering a piston and whatnot. So stuff like that I'll be going into as well. But this is just letting you know this is what I'm going to be doing for this channel in the near future, because I cannot dedicate any more time than I already have to this channel. And you can see I'm making videos on order of, once a month maybe, and it's just not enough. So anyway, so the basics, what I wanted to do today is there's a video I've been wanting to make, and that is about converting a basic Honda Super Cub like your C50, 70, and 90 up to a 110 motor. That's just that's a very, very common modification, because even 90cc engines, there's just not, it's not enough power. So, what I'm going to do is to explain this and to get to show how it works. I'm going to actually be doing the reverse. I have an original Honda 110. Well, it's actually it's a 100. But I'm going to be converting it down to a 50cc. Now, you'd be saying, why are you doing that? Well, this is an old bike. I also have 3 engines sitting around, and this bike has quite a few Chinese bits in it, because it's a work bike, and so but I'm using it every day now. So I want it to have a smoother, better running Honda engine. I'm also having trouble with the cylinder head in this bike, and so I just feel it's time to just kind of dump the entire Chinese rubbish that's in there and to go back to an original Honda engine. And like I said, I just have a bunch of Honda 50 parts laying around, so that's why I want to convert it to a 50cc. It has nothing to do with fuel economy, nothing to do with licensing or anything like that. It's just I have good parts laying around, and it's going to be free, and it also I can make a video out of this. And so when I convert it back to a 50cc, it's going to be the exact same process in reverse of what you would be doing converting up from a 50, 70, or 90 to a 100cc. So let me just make that clear. And anyway, so beginning, a few disclaimers. Everything here is for the what I call modern 12-volt bike. What do I mean when I say modern? Well, this is anything. This is the CDI 83 and up engine that is not the MD90 engine. That's not the heavy-duty engine. And most people are going to have this engine if you have a Super Cub 50, 70, 90. If you have the variants of basically any 12-volt variant is going to roughly be the same as this. So I understand if you have a 6-volt bike, and I've had a few of those myself, but keep in mind I understand that you want to keep it running and you want to kind of preserve as much as you can on the 6-volt bike. And if you want to swap it out for, you want to piece together a 12-volt kit, I just keep in mind the modern 12-volt bikes they're up to 37 years old now. The 12-volt bikes, not the 6-volt bikes. The 12-volt bikes are almost 40 years old now. So it's even some of the 12-volt stuff nowadays has been long time supplanted. Even the market, even the area I live in, the 12-volt C90 stuff's actually quite old now. And so, because there's so many FI engines, there's the newer designed engines. There's been like 4 or 5 new generations of engines since the C90 12-volt. So, and even the newer FI engines are 10 years old now. And so that's just 11 now. So keep in mind, even the 12-volt stuff is quite old. So at minimum, if you want to have it as an everyday bike, I highly recommend that you just convert it to a 12-volt. You just go for it, get a new loom, get a new, upgrade the electronics while you're at it, swap out all your bulbs and your ignition coil and all of that, unless you want to preserve a museum piece or it's something nostalgic about it. But I'm not going to go into 6-volt bikes because they're very, very old, and there's a lot of variants of the 6-volt, and it's piecing together 6 and 12-volt components, especially if you try and run the Lifan engine off of your 6-volt coils and all of that, and you try and it's just not worth it in my opinion. And so I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to say everything here is for the modern 12-volt engine produced from like 82 up to 2012. So that very, very long run engine. But like I said, even the 12-volt stuff's getting quite old now, so it's not going to be completely easy to. It's not like you're getting the most modern stuff. This is just the stuff that's around that you can convert your bikes to, or that you can still get parts for quite easily. So, but it's not the most modern by any means. This has nothing to do with the fuel-injected engines or the Generation 2, 3, and 4 engines that have come after this one. So just to be clear, just to clarify that. So this guide also is not going to go into every single nitpicky detail too, because it's to get you into the right direction, because there's lots of variations of engines in the 12-volt area. So like I said, this is just to get you in the right. I'm not going to tell you need part number this to get from piece, to get piece this from bike this. No. As I said, this will just get you in the right direction. It'll give you a feel for what you need because of, and I'll explain that as we go along, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. I also don't have the time, I have a full-time job, and I'm quite busy, so this is the best I can do, especially if I'm making free videos. So I hope you understand. I can't give you extremely detailed, fully produced content for free. I just don't have the time and the resources. And okay, so what I'm going to do for this guide, so it's a basic guide, and it's the 12-volt engine from roughly 82 up to 2012, and this is the non-FI engine, non-fuel-injected engine. I'm going to divide what you need into 3 basic categories, because I have to cover a lot of bikes, and these bikes have variations in them too, so it's not like I can just say get this part for this bike, because it's different from a C50 to a C70, which is different to a 90. The 50 has a 15mm carburetor, and it could be a PB or a PZ carburetor. You have the C70 has a 17mm PZ or PB, and the C90 has a PZ PB or a PB something. They have a variation of the PB carburetor after the early 2000s, and so that's just 8 different carburetors within 3 bikes, which all share the same frame and the same basic suspension and the same layout. And also C50 has a different CDI, has a different coil than the C90, and then the C90 has a different intake manifold. Has a different. It's all different, and so I'm going to have to. Forgive me if there's small details that I missed, but I just have to explain that there's so many variations of the 12-volt bikes themselves and it's going to be, I'm dividing us into 3 categories: parts that you will absolutely need regardless of which bike you have, parts that you might need. So if you start out with a 50, for example, you'll probably have to throw away the entire engine. unless you, well, yeah, you'll probably throw away the entire engine and all the electronics minus the loom, because none of that is going to work with the 110 engine very well, and I'll explain it a little bit. But in the 90cc, almost, I think actually all the electronics, for the most part, they work. So you don't have to switch anything out. And the 70, it's hit and miss. So you know what I mean. So there's parts that you absolutely will need. There's parts that you might need, as explained how there's differences from the 50, 70, and 90. And then there's parts that you might not necessarily need, or actually you won't need, but they're nice to have, and I'll explain, because you're going to be adding more power. And so things like the tires and the chain, like the gear ratios, you're probably going to want to change to accommodate the more power. And you might even want to go with a more heavy-duty chain, especially if you modify your bigger engine, because the smaller chains are not going to they're not going to last very long. Let's just put it that way. If you keep it on a higher powered, especially if you have a 110. So there's 3 different categories of parts, and the thing is with this, you don't. There's not a whole lot of to go on for disassembly and reassembly. You can just take it up. It's plug and play. Really, that's what it is, and a little bit of fiddling around. But there's really no cutting, or really there's hardly, and a little bit of wire splicing. You know, it depends. There's so many stator variations too. So you're going to have to. I'm not trying to talk too much. It's just this is what's necessary, I promise you, because there's so many, as I said, so many different bikes with so many different variations on individual parts too. So anyway, those are 3 categories of parts, and basically when you get the idea of what you need, you will just, for assembly and disassembly, you just take out your old engine and start plugging in the new stuff, and you will be very, very close. If it doesn't start right away, of course, you know, that you'll have to check things here and there. But like I said, this will get you very close, like 95%. And then that's, we'll just go from there. So I hope you get the feel for the guide. I hope you understand what I'm trying to do here. And I hope you understand why I'm saying the things that I need to say. Because like I said, it can be very, very, it's complicated. Let me put it that way. There's no plug and play here. It doesn't work that way. So, for the parts that you will need, you absolutely need. Now, this is going to sound stupid, so but I'll just say it, and then you're going to need the engine, obviously. But when I'm talking about the engine, I know that there are what most people have asked me in the past, over the past few years, as they ask me, what do you need? I want to swap in a Life N 110. It's almost all the time, 110 or 125. I want a Life N 110 or 125, and I want to keep it semi-auto. If you want to go manual, you will need a clutch cable, and you will also need the left-hand switch too, because obviously the Super Cub has no hand clutch, so you're going to need the hand clutch. You can get this from like the Bentleys, the S50s, S90s, or the CD90s. You can order that for online. I highly recommend going Honda. I've bought a few aftermarket switches, and they've been absolutely crap. So, I just don't even bother, to be honest with you. I know it's expensive. You'd be looking at that saying, like, this switch is like 70 or 80 quid, but that, just go with it. I mean, I promise you, it's not worth the headache to buy these really rubbish Chinese switches, and then they go out almost immediately, or they just feel like rubbish, and they look rubbish. So I just recommend going Honda quality and be done with it. You will love it. It's much better. I've said that many times in the videos in the past. But that's if you want to go manual. But if you want to keep it semi-auto, obviously you don't have to do any of that. I just wanted to throw that in there because I know there's people who do like to go for the manual bikes, especially if you like plop racing or anything like that. So, but if you want to keep it semi-auto, obviously you don't have to do that. But the thing is that there's 2 different kinds of engines that you can go for in the aftermarket engine. I'm not going to tell you which brand is best because, frankly, I hate all of them. I've never had a good experience with... I can't say that I've been 100% satisfied with anything that I've bought that's aftermarket Chinese. I bought aftermarket Taiwanese, but be very careful because there's a lot of people that will say, ooh, aftermarket Taiwanese, but China and Taiwan both speak Mandarin. I know there's variations between the two, but the unscrupulous sellers will just put Chinese, or they will put made in Taiwan and then sell you the engine, and it's absolutely not made in Taiwan, it's made in China. So make sure you get a reputable seller, okay? So don't fall for that nonsense online too. What I would do I'm not going to tell you which engine I like to buy because I like to piece together engines personally, and I like to buy everything from Japan. That's me. It's more expensive that way, but it's better in the long run. So what you would, when you go with the engine though, let me see where you go. If you have a 6-volt bike, basically what you're going to need, hang on. All right, sorry, I just got an email. Anyway, what you will need is, if you have a 6-volt bike, nothing will work with the 6-volt bike. Now the loom, keep in mind the loom is just wires. Okay, what makes it a 12-volt bike are things like the voltage regulator or the rectifier, as they call it. Depends where your terminology on that, and also the ignition coil. That's dependent. I know the coils operate at 300-400 volts, but I mean they do require 12-volt supply to get it. I'm not going to get into that. But electronics are what is going to be running, and your light bulbs obviously are going to be 6 volts as well, and things like the signal lamp flasher. Those are going to be you're going to need to change all of that if you have a 6-volt bike. The plugs are different between 6 and 12 volts for the most part, so you're going to need to now you don't have to throw away the entire loom, but the thing is if the 6-volt bike, your loom's probably at least 40 years old. I personally I recommend getting a 12-volt loom. If you have your switch gear is going to work because it's there's nothing intrinsic in the switch gear that is going to make it a 6-volt switch gear. Of course, it's going to look different, and the wires are going to be possibly different colors as well. So I just recommend keeping it. You don't need to get new switchgear, but I recommend getting a 12-volt loom and just wiring it up with all the new, your voltage regulator, rectifier, whichever it is, signal lamp flasher, new light bulbs, all of that. I just go with that because, and of course a battery, because that's just the easiest way to do it. If you are a first-time tinkerer with electronics, you're going to waste so much time. This is if you want the plug and not plug and play, but as close as you can get to plug and play. But the thing is that if you want to learn electronics, it's great. Okay, you will get a really good feel and you will get the knowledge, and the knowledge is very, very useful. And I know people will think, well, that's a waste of time, but that's like going to that is the kind of knowledge I think it's missing these days. Is really practical understanding of what things are and how they work. So I don't call it a loss at all. I've converted bikes from 6 to 12 volts before, and I don't consider it a waste of time because I'm a mechanic, and learning these things is very, very good. But just if you want the bike and just a relatively easy way to get a bike with a better engine in it and contemporary electronics, I'll just get a new loom. It's more expensive, but you're going to waste a lot of time if you're trying to save money. That's just my point there. Another thing to add is if you want to add electric start, it's not as simple as buying an electric start engine that has the electric starter on it. You're going to need the handlebar switch. You're going to need the wiring loom that actually has the proper connections, and you're going to need a starter relay for beginners. I personally also recommend getting a higher capacity battery and fitting it in there, because especially if you live in a cold place, because, let me put it this way. I have a 104cc, it's slightly modified, and the starter motor, I have a little 3.5 amp hour battery, or maybe 4 amp. It's a small battery for the Super Cub 90. It doesn't actually start the engine. It won't do it unless the engine's warm. It won't start it. It doesn't have the power. So I'll recommend getting a higher a more powerful battery as well. And so that's just something you might want to keep in mind. Okay. So you're going to need, that's just basically what I would recommend, what you would obviously need. My personal recommendation, this is only a recommendation, okay? Now keep in mind I'm small. I'm only 7 stone. I like having 9 stone, excuse me. I'm not that small. I recommend, my personal favorite is getting the 110 engine, kind of the 50 millimeter stroke with the 52 millimeter bore. There's a few reasons. One is it's a more rev happy engine, but secondly, the thing I like is that what you can do is you can keep it looking mostly stock, because the actual height, and I say height, I guess it's technically the width, or the length of the cylinder, the top end, is actually smaller. It's the same size as the C90. So what you can do is you can retain the original airbox, and we got a little bit. You have to modify it just a little bit, but with an original manifold, you can keep the original airbox on there, and for the most part, a little bit of fiddling, like I said, and it looks completely stock. Also, since the top end is not moved completely forward, it's not moved forward any. If you use the C90 length exhaust pipe, it fits with your plastic leg shield as well, so it doesn't look funny. You don't have to cut up your leg shield at all. So if you want the stock look, which is something I really, really like, the 110 with the 52mm bore is my recommendation. Now, the 110, yes, I do like the 110, the nice 110, not nice meaning, I mean, that's the name of the bike, with the 55.6mm stroke and the 50mm bore. I like that engine more for the performance. It's more torquey, and I do like the torque for in town. And it's but that engine is you're going to need to cut up the exhaust bracket. You're going to need to cut up a few other things. It doesn't look as nice when you put it all together, you know. And so I like for my recommendation. That's why I say for the 52mm bore. That's all I can really give in terms of recommendations. And I've never swapped in a 125. Chinese engine, so I have no experience with that and what it feels like. Another thing to note with engines, though, is I don't think a lot of people understand that they think that the 110 engine is going to be a automatic more power than the 90. But interestingly enough, if you actually look at the power ratings for the Lifan 110, you only get something like half of a brake horsepower more, something like that. I don't think people realize just how little power the 110 offers, how much more it offers. It offers a little bit more torque, but it doesn't offer that much more power than the 90, a good running 90, okay? So, and the reason is because they're detuned. The Chinese engines are detuned because they're literally made with inferior materials that do not withstand the kind of high power, you know, like the modifications. The stress with more aggressive ignition timing and more aggressive cam timing as well, valve timing. So when you put a 110 in there, you don't get that much more power, and so you might. I think it's literally half a brake horsepower more. It's not much at all, and just a little bit more torque, something like 10% more torque. And if you think of it, it's like going from it would be like going from like a 1.2 Super Mini to a 1.6 Super Mini, and you're thinking, oh, I'm getting a lot more power, but it's like going from, you know, like 75 brake horsepower to 80, and you think, well, wait a minute, that's not that much more, right? And that's something I really want to point out here. So my personal recommendation, if you can, is to actually get yourself an original 100cc engine, the original. And you can get these parts from Thailand and Vietnam and get the original Vietnamese Honda parts because they're a little bit more expensive. Yes, actually, they're quite a bit more expensive, but you will notice the Vietnamese 100cc engine gives you 8.6 bhp. I think it's 8.6. And so the 97cc engine from Honda from Thailand to Vietnam, or of course Indonesia, Malaysia, those countries too, actually gets you a lot more power than your 90 than the 110 does from China. So that's another thing to keep in mind too. Just so you're aware. And I'll throw this little bit in here because I know people like information about engines. If you just go for upgrading, I did a video on big balls. If you just go with the 100cc big ball kit, not kit, but the 100cc upgrade or 102 up to 102cc upgrade, you actually get more power than the 110 as well, and you can keep the stock look of your 90, but you're going to start stretching the limits of your clutch pack, okay? So just keep that in mind too. And of course, if you want a 4-speed, you're going to have to do... I've done a 4-speed conversion video too, so, you know, that's possible too, but that's a lot of tinkering. So, but I just want to give you... in my opinion, the best way to go for an engine is actually to try and, if possible, to source a original 100cc engine from Thailand or, you know, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines or something, and because you will get more power and it will also be a good, more reliable Honda engine. But, you know, the 110 Lifans are so cheap and easy to find, and of course, you can modify them too, but just keep in mind they're not very strong and they're not very powerful too, especially for the displacement. So anyway, what we are doing, that's my basic overview on the engines. I mean, if you I might do a video later on what I recommend in terms of engine swaps, but that's about the basic information I can give you here. And oh yeah, and my bike is a 100cc engine, has a 100cc engine too, as you can see. And this bike hits 115. Okay, it does. It will do 115 kph, and it's gutsy. Okay, and it's a 4-speed, and I mean I'm downgrading it, but but it's a good engine. It's 97 cc's sounds really small until you realize how weak the 110 from China or the 125 from China is. So just putting that out there for you, so that you know, because I don't think a lot of people do. And just one small note with the engine: whatever engine you get, make sure you get the corresponding manifold to it too. Each cylinder head is going to be tuned to its specific manifold, and so if you don't get the proper manifold, you can very easily start to mess things up. You can choke out your engine. You can also start your engine detonating too. If you put a C90 manifold on a 110 head, it depends what port size the 110 is, but you can easily run out of flow, and you can also start, like I said, detonating your engine. I've had that happen with when I put a C90 manifold on a 110 head from a 110 Lifan head. So just to keep in mind that. Okay. So so that's what you will absolutely necessarily need. Now, moving on to the next category of what you might need. This depends largely on if you have a 50, 70, or 90cc bike. If you have a 50cc, you can actually keep the 15mm carburetor. It does work, and you can keep it on the original manifold, the 50cc manifold, even though it has a tiny, tiny port. You will run out of power after 6,000 RPMs, 6,500 RPMs. So it's just, I don't recommend keeping it. I really don't. If you have the 70cc carburetor, or better yet, well, okay, if you have the 70cc 17mm carburetor, that's pretty good up to, I want to say, 7,500 RPMs. And given the original cam profile on Hondas really tapers off after around 8,000 RPMs, it's actually not a bad thing to keep your original 70cc carburetor. But I've only done that once, okay? So keep in mind. But I've actually been quite happy with the flow of the 70cc carb and intake manifold on a larger engine. But the best is the 90cc carburetor with what I would do is use the original intake manifold for the larger engine, okay? Not this 90cc carburetor intake manifold, but the larger 110 or whatever manifold, 100cc 110, and you keep it with the 90cc carburetor and you put the 100cc jets in there. That is the best. Actually, the 100cc engine uses a 19mm carburetor with a slightly bigger intake manifold, so it's the same size as the 90, so it's not like you actually, and it flows very well even for a 110 too. If you have I have a 2016 Wave 110 and also uses a 19mm carburetor, so it flows. In my opinion, it's the perfect carburetor. For a larger engine, it's the 19mm. The 70cc is slightly small, but you will still see a noticeable amount of increase in power so long as you jet it right. 50cc is too small, you tend to choke out, but it does work. Okay, so if you're on a super tight budget, you do get more power. You just run out of flow after like 6,500 RPMs, but it does work. And so, there's no problem using it. It's not going to self-destruct or anything like that, in case you were wondering. So that's a maybe. If you want to go bigger with the carburetor, I don't recommend it. I tried a VM22, and I've tried a VM26 as well, and I've tried the Key PE 22, whatever it was, 21. It's too small. It's too small. The engine is too small for that kind of carburetor. I recommend, unless you go 125, and if you go 125 or higher revving 125, then the VM22 is a little bit better for that. But I like the kind of torquey, off-the-line, low-end grunt that Honda gives you with the PE or the PZ, a PB, excuse me, not PE, PZ or PB carburetor, the 19. I like that much more. It's a better feel, and that's if you like kind of grunt from 3 to 7,000 RPMs. It just, to me, it feels better. It's a smoother carburetor too. The VM is a little bit difficult to get set up. I'm just going to leave it at that, okay? So I don't go too long on this video. In terms of foot pegs, if you have the wide case, now they have, I don't know which country has which engines available. But basically, you have the secondary clutch engine, which is the twin clutch motor. I've done a video on that in case you don't know what engine that is. And by the way, only the original 88 to 2004 engines, only those fit. Nothing. The 3-bolt engines, they don't fit, meaning the 3 bolt holes, they don't fit without cutting up your frame, and the same with the larger 3-bolt engine, those don't fit either. So only the original ones fit, but what you do need is new foot pegs, and a new foot peg, new kickstand, not the center stand, but just the kickstand. You will need those too because for the wider case, it has to accommodate the wider clutch, and it has to accommodate, and you also need new exhaust pipe too. Because your exhaust pipe won't fit because it will collide with the clutches. So just keep that in mind too. So you might need that. But if you go with I've seen single clutch 110s, okay, that look like this, meaning the engine that looks like the C90. So if you do that, you don't need new foot pegs at all. And you only if you get the longer stroke engine, which I don't know if it's available in your particular country. You have to check the 55.6. The 55 6mm stroke engine, you will need the longer exhaust pipe for. But if you get the shorter one, which is the 50mm stroke with the 52mm bore, then you can use your original exhaust pipe on there. So that's a might if you that you might need that. But one thing to note is, and if you have the 50cc, so if you have a C50 or C70, your exhaust pipe's going to be too short, okay? So you have 2 ways to deal with this. You can get a new exhaust pipe, but actually I just recommend getting a C90 exhaust pipe. That's the best way to go because the 50 and the 70s, they have different baffles in there, and they're going to throw off the jetting and throw off the flow. So I just don't recommend trying to make those work. Of course, I've tried to do it before, and it takes a bit more fiddling than I think is necessary. Okay, and then the next thing that you might need, but you're not, you might need this. It just depends on which bike you start out with. You might need the coil and CDI. Okay, so some Chinese units, they don't. Let me just be clear on this. So if you have 50 or I don't know about the 70s, but I know that most 50s, they don't have what they call the idle circuit in the CDI, which and they don't need them because of just the nature of the engine, which basically it retards the ignition timing when you are at idle, and so that you get a really smooth idle and at lower RPMs too, and but you don't need that in the 50cc. But with the 90cc's, they have this idle circuit, so that's what retards the ignition timing, like I was just saying. But if you try and put the 50cc CDI in the 90 or the 100 or the 110, it works, but it's not. It doesn't idle smoothly. You have to crank up the idle quite a bit, and it's going to sputter a lot, and it's not going to be that happy. It does work. Don't get me wrong. I've done it before, and I've done it even with the larger 110 engines, so it does work. But it's not easy to start too. That's an annoying thing too. So. So if you're converting a 50, I don't know about the 70, okay, but if you have a 50, you're going to need the CDI from a 90cc bike, or the C100 too, the Astrias, or the EX5, or the Super Cub 100, the modern 12-volt 100 engine. But one thing to note that I've seen is some aftermarket Chinese units, they don't have the idle circuit. They look like they do. That's what's deceiving, is they put the big case. So the small case, the 50cc CDI without the idle circuit looks like this. I do believe that some of the newest 50cc's actually did come with a larger CDI. I don't know if that was for production cost saving or if it was beneficial to the bike, but I do believe some of the later ones had the bigger case. So if your CDI looks like this compared to this, see the pictures, then they will likely have the idle circuit thing in there. But the thing to note is that some aftermarket Chinese manufacturers, they give you the big case, but they don't put the idle circuit in there because it's more expensive. So I've done that before. I bought a couple of aftermarket units thinking that they had the idle circuit in there, and they didn't. And so it gave the exact same symptoms of the 50cc, spluttering at idle a little bit and popping and not really being super easy to start. And it, of course, it made me angry. So I just wanted to show you, wanted to make sure that you were aware that this is a possibility. Also, at high RPMs too, in terms of holding ignition timing, I've seen some pretty dodgy numbers coming out of Chinese units. And so if you're going to be revving this quite a bit, or if you're going racing, I just don't recommend it at all. I recommend getting, I just recommend the original OEM Honda unit, and just save yourself the headache. Of course, if you have reputable aftermarket performance parts makers, those, are okay to go with too. It doesn't have to be from Honda. Honda is not God or anything, okay? But just to save yourself the headache, and you have a stock bike, or you want to do a little bit of racing, I do recommend. Well, actually, no. You probably want a performance CDI for the racing part. So I'm just going to say, for the ease of use, get a Honda original 90cc or the 100cc CDI, and that is the best way to go, in my opinion. Just because some Chinese units, they're not very forthcoming in what their performance is, and they're just not very good. Okay, and the coil too. Again, this is a maybe, but I've seen 50cc coils work, and for the most part, I think they're all the same. But it's very possible that they're not all the same. So just make sure that, and most likely your coils will start your bike regardless. But if you seem to be having ignition troubles, just get a new coil and try it out, okay? That's the easiest way to go about it. Not to really sit and think about it, but just to get the right parts, and just accept that you're going to probably need new parts too, to make it work correctly. It's not, you know what I mean? I hope you understand what I mean. Okay, I hope that's enough for now. So those are the parts that you might need: a carburetor, foot pegs, and the exhaust. Again, I've explained why. Basically, a carburetor, I recommend at the minimum the 70cc carburetor, but 90cc is optimum, even up to 110 cc's. Foot pegs only if you have secondary clutch engine or the twin clutch engine. Do you need a wider set of foot pegs and a kickstand? If you have the 50 or 70cc, you're going to need at least the 90cc exhaust. You can keep the 90cc exhaust on the stock 110 as long as the cylinder head is the short type. The top end is the short type, 50 millimeter stroke. Okay, and the CDI, I recommend only if you have a 50. I don't know about the 70. But if you have a 90, you can keep it stock, and get the original Honda, because Chinese units can be rubbish, and they have issues with idle and possibly with higher RPM and keeping ignition timing stable, and you don't want detonation. That's bad, and so that's why I recommend original Honda. Now, to the parts that you may not necessarily need, but you might want. Okay, so the chain is no problem, but it's a good idea to get yourself a stronger chain, in my opinion. The 428 pitch chain, it's a more heavy-duty chain. I run a 420 chain, and I have a slightly modified 100 bike, but it is stretchy, and so and I don't expect it to last that long, but I don't care, because chains are literally like 10 quid where I live, so I don't really care that much. I can just slap a new chain on there, take it to my neighbor, and they'll put it on in 5 minutes, and then I'll just go. So it's no big deal for me, but most if you live in a different country and you just want it to last longer, whatever, I recommend getting a set of 428 chain, and of course the sprockets to match. In terms of ratio, so if you're upgrading from a 50cc, obviously you're going to want to gear it differently. If you have a 110, I like lower RPM cruising, and I like kind of the wide set of gears. Like the C90 is a very wide gear ratio. So what I like to do is I like to take advantage of Honda's kind of wide torque band, and I like to gear it a little bit tall. So I run like a 1534 in terms of the sprocket gear ratios. And again, these are all for the 12 volts, all right? I know there's different gear ratios for different, like a cross cub or something like that. I'm just talking about your basic bog standard C90, 12 volt C90, and they usually all use the same gear ratios. And I like to run a 1536 or 1534, or a 1636, or a 1634 if I'm going long distance. But that's tall, okay? I'm going to flat out admit that is a bit tall. So if you want shorter gear ratios, and especially if you're heavier, see, like I said, I'm 9 stone, so I would recommend going probably 1539 or 1436. That's about the same gear ratio, and go from there. Keep some different sprockets on hand, to play around with. So if you're heavier and you're carrying some some gear and you live in a hilly area, I'd definitely recommend like a 1436 or a 1539 for that. But if you're lighter and if you're kind of in a flat area and you can make use of the wider torque band and you don't really need to be super revvy, then I like to run it taller, like 1534 or 1636 or even 1634. I've even run a 1734, but that was a bit too tall for my liking. That was like 6,000 RPMs at 100 kPa, 5,000, I think 55 at 100 kPa, something stupid like that. That's too tall, even for me. Very lightweight and no gear. So just to give you an idea. And that's my opinion on gears. But it is definitely, if you have like original 50 chain though, it's not going to be very happy with the 110. It's going to feel super jerky. It's going to be like driving a pickup in 4 low or something like that. So I don't, especially if you're coming from a 50 or a 70, definitely go, spring the cash to get yourself some taller gear ratios. If you have the original 90 ratios, those are usually pretty good, actually. You can usually just change the pinion. So if you have like a 13 or 14, you can change the pinion to a 16 or 17 and leave the rear sprocket and you'll be okay. And that usually works quite well. So just to heads up. Tires. I like having fat tires on my bike, but it will throw off your speedometer rating. But my speedo doesn't even work on this bike, so personally, I don't care. But if you live in a place where there's traffic cameras and you need to keep an eye on your speed, I would recommend more getting a GPS. Personally, because these Super Cub speedos they kind of hit and miss sometimes, and so I would recommend getting. I'll just recommend a more accurate speedometer like a GPS one, but. I do really like, especially with the more power, I do like going, especially if you have 225 tires, I like going at least to 250 in the front and 3 in the back. Three, I call them the 300 size. I know it's 3.00, but I just like the extra traction as well. It rains a lot where I live, so I like having extra traction. I'm also very light too, like I said, so I don't put a lot of pressure on the tires, so I tend to skid the rear quite a bit if I downshift a bit aggressively and I'm not paying attention. So my personal preference, I like having fatter tires on my bike, especially with more power. I really, really love the Metzeler ME22s, but if you don't have those, the Conti Pros are pretty good. I can't remember. That's from what I've been told, though. I don't get Continental tires where I live, so but I do love the Metzeler rubbers. They're excellent. So and they wear out quite fast, but they are great for traction, especially in wet weather. So and of course there's play around with whatever it is that what you like. But that's my opinion, and I do like bigger tires, especially when I go for more power, because the gripping power of those little. It's so easy to skid the rears out, especially if you're on 250s and you put in like a 110 and you slightly modify it. It locks up the rear so easily, and especially if you're light like me. So keep that in mind. And that's basically it. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful to you. That gives you an idea too, the pictures of what you will need, and also to give you an idea of what is involved, and to also give you. I just wanted to give you the basic overview. I apologize if this was quite long. I just tried to give you as much detail as I possibly can to be useful. I'm not trying to talk to make this long. I'm just trying to give you what information that you need. Feel free to, you can comment saying that was too long, or no, or I want more details, or whichever. But this is, like I said, this is to get you on the right track. This is to help you understand basically what you're coming from and what you will be going into. So anyway, I hope that this was helpful. Any other further questions or comments, keep in mind I am very busy at the moment. So if I don't get back to you, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I'm busy. So, but you're free to comment as well. Anyway, I'm Mini Motorman. So until next time, goodbye.